My name is Evie Henderson. I'm the Multicultural Project Officer here at the Cooma Multicultural Centre.
And what did we do today?
Today we celebrated the International Day for Rural Women's Day, and we had different community groups coming together. We had the CWA, the Country Women's Association, we had the local craft art group ladies coming, and we had newly arrived Kerala families coming and the Multicultural Activity Group in Cooma.
And what was great about today?
Everything was great about today. I think the wonderful thing was to connect people together. So we had people who never met. We had the Country Women's Association were very keen to find out who moved to Cooma, who were those women who moved here. The craft ladies were interested in sort of finding out what other people do in their countries craft-wise. Everyone brought a plate, so food is always a wonderful thing to share with each other. And if you eat together, the stories will flow and people will talk and chat. And so new connections are made.
And today's UN International Day of Rural Women. What is important about rural women?
I think the rural women, they're resilient women. They're women who are flexible, they're women who come when help is needed. And because there's so many new people moving to Cooma from different cultures and different countries, we need the local women, we need the rural women to get together and help. It needs a whole community approach. And to build those bridges between those different women is such a fantastic thing to do.
And bringing all the different groups of women together, what are the next steps, do you think?
Well, the next steps is that now the Country Women's Association and the craft ladies, they came here to the Cooma Multicultural Centre. Now we will go and visit them as well. So we invited to go to their meetings and their gatherings, and again we strengthen those bridges, we're building a new relationship and we get to know each other's stories.
Hello, what's your name and where are you from?
My name's Andrea and I'm from India.
And why do you think women are important in rural areas?
Well, I think women are important in rural areas because they're strong and they're independent. They help the society grow in many different ways.
And do you think it's important in areas like Cooma?
Yes, it's very important because there are very different activities that women can be excited in, and there are lots of activities that only women can do.
Could you tell me your name, please?
Margaret Peterson.
Tell me a little bit about the CWA.
Oh, CWA was set up for country women in the country, rural women. It started off in Crookwell early on in the 1900s, about 1922 I think, and it spread rapidly from there, and it involved helping women and families in the country. So in this particular moment, the CWA has been very much involved in drought relief, raising funds for that. Each branch sort of does its own little bit of fundraising, and some of that gets sent to the community. So we work with the community as well. We have little community projects that we get involved in. Little grants for the local schools and
so you're helping, it's women helping women in the rural areas?
Yes, yes, yes. It's for country women. That's part of our motto, for country women.
And how important are country women in rural Australia for the communities?
Well, there are CWA branches in many towns all over the state, and in fact Australia-wide. But in terms of New South Wales, there are many branches, and they work with community other community groups. There are a lot of other service organisations that we can work with, or we just do things for the community. If there's a particular need, we can look to helping with that.
How important are women in general for rural communities?
Well, they're very important. They're the backbone of the communities. It's very often the women who are involved in a lot of these organisations and who are involved in helping out in the community, working with, liaising, talking to different groups and finding out what their needs are.
So you can understand why the UN globally are calling today International Day for Rural Women?
I can understand that because rural women a little bit have different kind of lifestyles and needs to city women. In the country there's a sense of community that people are involved with each other. We work together as a community. So there's all sorts of different other clubs and groups as well, and they all have come at it from a different angle, so we work together. And CWA has been particularly involved in things like education and health. They're some of the main areas where we've been working in.
But now in a time of crisis really with the drought.
And now this year there's a lot of focus on the drought.
So it's women helping women.
Women helping women. And there are other things that on the farm that we look at. Each year we choose a plant and an animal and a foe. Like for example, I think this coming year the foe is the carp, which is sort of something that needs to be dealt with that's causing damage in the rivers.
That's an environmental project?
Environmental projects that are involved in. So these are all things that involve women and the wider community as well. So it isn't necessarily just about women, it's about families, because women are part of families, and so you can't just sort of isolate women on their own. They're part of the families, and that's why we need to help women, because they are the backbone of many families.
How do you think rural women contribute to rural communities?
I think they're the backbone of most rural communities. We have a very large Probus club that I'm part of, and there's many more members of that than there are the men's committee. And you'll find most of the committees are women, rural or otherwise.
What about in times of bushfires and droughts? What do women do then?
Well, I was the bushfire coordinator for the 2003 fires, for the rural fires, that huge fire that started in Canberra, refused help and swept right through the park, leaving absolute devastation to this day.
And what did you have to do?
I organised the fire crews. They had to have the right seniority. You'd have somebody who was experienced, somebody who was less experienced, and a rank beginner. And they all had to have so many hours sleep, and they all had to, if there was a farmer who was fighting the fire, well, I had to have somebody to go and feed his sheep so he could do the fire. That went on for about 3 months. And I'm not saying that that's a woman's job, it just turned out that the two people who were to have done it were both women, and one unfortunately was in hospital for that fire, which meant that I was in the hot seat.
And can you think of any other examples of women in the rural community that have helped like that?
Well, CWA has always helped. It's not something I belong to. At the moment, I think our local scout troop is being restarted, and I think that's being started by women. I don't think it's been started by men. I think most of the teachers locally, I'm not absolutely sure, but I think you'll find there are more women teachers than there are men.
And you were a bush nurse. What did that mean?
It meant that I worked for the Snowy Mountains Hydroelectric Authority, that I worked in rural areas like Talbingo, Cancoban, Cabramatta, and eventually into Cooma, and then I was in charge of the nursing sisters and their medical centres where they were not necessarily doctors during the construction or once the construction was finished and we're grading down and in the snowy years.
And when you were talking about some of those places before, weren't they quite remote?
Originally, yes, but the towns have got bigger now.
But when
yes.
you were working as a rural bush nurse, to start off with, what were some of the experiences that you had when it was remote?
I think probably it was a good job that I had some midwifery experience.
So you think that rural women just get on with it?
I do, yes, I do. And it's interesting, there's a young lady here now who's in the worst position possible. A husband in a refugee camp, 2 kids under 4 or something, and a cardiac condition herself, no visible forms of support. Well, she's getting on with it. She's not making a fuss and poor me. I just think that's wonderful. She's getting on with the challenge in front of her and doing the best she can. We have children and somebody's got to look after them.
So you think it's about looking after families as well, getting your priorities right? Or?
I certainly do. I was born during a war and my parents had refugees come and stay with them from Hungary. We didn't speak their language, they didn't speak ours, in war-torn UK. I suppose I took a leaf out of their book in many respects. For years I fostered children here. Yeah, I think, and after all, Florence Nightingale really didn't look at men to be nurses.
Rural women are amazing because they are very resourceful and they're great at supporting each other, and yeah, we just band together, and when something needs to be done, we're all there for each other.
Hello, what's your name?
Jean.
Jean, and where do you come from, Jean?
I come from Cooma.
And why do you think rural women are important?
Well, I think rural women are very important to the community and even the district because they're out there to do what they can, and they back up things that have been done around the district. And I don't think we'd, you know, the organisations and that around town, that would be any good without them, because they're always there on hand when needed, and I think they're most important.